Well, good morning. Can everyone hear me? I didn't think so. There we go. That's better. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the gubernatorial debate between Governor Sununu and Senator Sherman. We're really happy that you joined us this morning. Thank you for being here first thing on a gray Monday morning. And thank you to Eversource, our presenting sponsor, for all their support. And last but not least, I want to thank the New Hampshire Institute of Politics for loaning us their venue, the best venue to do this wonderful, important programming. I'm Heather McGrail, the President and CEO of the Greater Manchester Chamber. And as I think you all know, one of the major functions of our chamber is to bring these issues from each candidate to the business community so that you understand where they stand on the issues and the policies affecting our business community. As a reminder, the Greater Manchester Chamber is a nonpartisan organization. We do not endorse any candidates. We simply bring the information to our business community so you can make an educated decision. I'd like to take a moment to recognize the efforts of both candidates. As we all know, it's a very difficult ride to be in public service, and I really would like to give a round of applause to both Chris Sununu and Tom Sherman. Next, I would like to bring up Mike Licata, the Director of Government Affairs for Eversource, our presenting sponsor. Mike?
Thanks, Heather, and good morning, everybody. My name is Michael Licata. I'm the head of government relations for Eversource Energy here in New Hampshire. And I just want to say a couple very quick words. First of all, Eversource is thrilled to continue to support this absolutely vital event and the chamber. I also want to thank Heather and her amazing team. Debates are so important to the democratic process, and events like this don't just happen. They take an incredible amount of work on behalf of the chamber, their team, and working with the candidate staffs to bring them together so we have the opportunity to hear directly from the candidates themselves. I also want to thank the two candidates, Governor Sununu and Senator Sherman, so much for agreeing to participate today. You know, access to candidates, a free exchange of ideas are really what we're known for here in New Hampshire. It's our brand of retail politics that, you know, brings candidates from across the country to our state. And so really excited to be here, really excited to hear from the candidates, and really just want to thank everybody so very much and enjoy the debate.
Thank you so much, Mike. And again, thank you to the whole Eversource team for your support. So our wonderful Scott Spradling will be the moderator for this program. I think many of you know Scott, but by way of introduction, he's an Emmy award-winning former reporter, anchor, and political director for WMUR, and he now owns the Spradling Group, a consulting, lobbying, and media firm. He's also a wonderful chamber board of director and very supportive member of our chamber. So without further ado, I'm going to hand the podium over to Scott.
Good morning, everyone. Happy Monday. Thank you for being here. It's wonderful to be here at St. Anselm College, and many thanks to our two candidates for governor for this conversation about economic and business-related issues. Let me explain the format for just a second. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to make their opening remarks. I will ask a series of questions based on input from the chamber membership. Questions are focused on areas that relate to strategic goals for the chamber, key community issues, things like education, workforce, economic development, diversity, equity, housing, infrastructure. Candidates will receive 1 minute to answer each question, and then 30 seconds for any follow-ups past that answer. Our timer, Andrew, will keep track with a yellow card that is 15-second warning, and a red card when the candidate's time is up. So Andrew is my MVP this morning. So thank you all, and then we will leave 2 minutes for each candidate for closings. So it's an honor to be here. Now I'd like to introduce our candidates alphabetically. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the podium Dr. Tom Sherman. And now please welcome Governor Chris Sununu. The order of candidates' opening and closing remarks was determined by a coin flip about 15 minutes ago. So for the first 2 minutes, the opening statement, we will begin with Dr. Sherman. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Scott. I've spent my entire career working to help others, whether as a volunteer EMT in high school or as a doctor for 35 years or as a state rep or as a state senator. My patients have taught me two incredibly important lessons in all that time, which are building relationships of trust and listening. And that's what's allowed me to lead in the legislature on issues like Medicaid expansion, lowering prescription drug costs, or more recently, promoting New Hampshire manufacturing. I've been listening, going back and forth across the state, and businesses are telling me that their number one issue is workforce. In Keene, there's a great business there that wants to open a third shift. They can't find workforce, and when they do, they can't find housing. In Hopkinton, there's a small cafe, spectacular, maple, bacon, BLT there, but they had to close on their busiest weekend in the summer because they couldn't find staff, and they were closed from 3 o'clock on Saturday until Monday. And in Portsmouth, they can't find childcare, so their employees who go out on maternity leave have to, can't come back. They can't find childcare for those employees. But Chris Sununu has been spending too much time on being distracted and stepping away from that focus on issues that like putting in place the first abortion ban in modern history, or blocking the ability of the people of New Hampshire or their businesses to expand their energy options. We need a governor, and that's why I'm running for governor, is to make sure that the focus is on the people of New Hampshire and the businesses of New Hampshire, the fundamentals behind workforce, which are housing, childcare, education, and training. When we have that focus and our businesses can be as productive as they know they can be, we'll soar. That's why I'm running for governor. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sherman. Governor Sununu, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. Great to see everybody here on a early Monday. Always a good excuse not to go to work right away. Come see a couple candidates. But you know, as was opened up, it is great that we are able to have the debates and have the forums, and I think we've both been pretty good about making sure that we're out there talking about issues as much as we possibly can, because folks have to be able to ask the questions and see what's out there. There's no doubt New Hampshire's we're on a great track here. There's no doubt about that. But you can't take it for granted. With when you have the fastest growing population, strongest economy, not just in New England anymore on the East Coast. It's now really one of the strongest economies in the country, all the opportunity that we're creating, and really taking it from the approach of the individual, right? It's about you. It's not about the government. It's not about the system. It's got to be about you or your kid or your business or whatever challenge you're having. And kind of the approach that my administration has taken over the past 5 or 6 years is to say, okay, how do we wrap our services around your needs? As opposed to the old way of doing it and saying, well, we have these services, come into our door and we'll see if it works for you, right? And so whether it's on the issues of education or on opportunities we're trying to create for business or keeping costs low, and I think we've done a very, very good job of that in terms of making sure that we're not taking your money in the first place, right? My opponent supported and voted for an income tax, and we shot that down. I was shocked. I don't think any of us thought that an income tax was going to come across the governor's desk. And the fact that we had to veto it twice was quite shocking. But the whole point is, when you crack that door open, we say, well, we're just going to do a little income tax. It's only 0.5% on everyone's wages in the state. No income tax stays at 0.5%. It's going to exacerbate. And then you go to a sales tax and broad-based taxes. The next thing you know, we're just like everybody else. But we're not like everybody else, right? This is New Hampshire. We're very different than the 49 other states. In fact, I would say we're the envy of the other 49 other states. Folks want to come and figure out how we're doing it here. How are we so efficient? How do we get such a bang for our dollar? How do we have such great services? And it really is about making sure that it's not about our system as much as wrapping around the needs of the individual. So we get a lot of challenges. Mental health is a challenge. Opioids will continue to be a challenge. Creating those opportunities will always be a challenge. But at the end of the day, we have the infrastructure to get it done.
Governor, thank you. What I will do is I'll ask questions of each gentleman and give alternating opportunities to be able to go first. You'll each have 1 minute to respond, and if we have any rebuttals or need to extend the conversation, we'll go back and forth on 30 seconds.
Am I not? Is there a clock or anything?
There's a clock straight ahead. Yep.
Whereabouts?
Can you see it on the back wall?
No, I meant like a 1 minute clock.
Oh,
I don't
so
wanna...
he will
Oh, okay, great.
At
Sorry.
15 seconds, we'll do the yellow card,
Perfect.
and when the minute's up, you'll see the red.
If you see my press conferences, I tend to ramble on, so I just want to be
I got your
sure
back on
I'm
that. I'll
watching the
watch
clock.
for you.
Thank you.
So let's start with economic development. Governor, why don't we start with you first? Despite
Okay.
the effects of COVID,
Sure.
economic development activity here in the Manchester region, whether it's in the Mill Yard, the downtown, or in nearby communities like Londonderry and Bedford, that development has seen strong arrivals of new companies and existing firms expanding. What strategies have you implemented or will you implement for the next 2 years to ensure the state is promoting and incentivizing more economic development?
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. I mean, since before the pandemic to today, the state has just about 4,000 new businesses. That's new businesses, never mind the expansion of businesses. That's an incredible number. Folks want to be here. They're trying new things. They're expanding. Obviously, a lot of economic opportunity. We have the lowest poverty rate in the country. We have some of the highest wages in the country. We have really the most skilled workforce in the entire country. So folks want to be here. And again, we don't start out by saying, here's your taxes, here's your bill, here's how you support us as the government. It's all about making sure that we put some of these businesses first. I think Tom actually hit it right on the head. It's about workforce, it's about housing. It's about housing and it's about workforce. Those are the big issues right now that in theory are kind of barriers. So what do? Well, you can just talk about it, and we have a good strategy, we have a good game plan, but the strategy is go. $100 million Invest NH workforce housing program. The state had never done anything like that before. Opening those doors of opportunity, that's really the biggest challenge. Too often folks say, we want to come to New Hampshire, but we can't afford or we can't find the place to live. That type of doorway, if you will, is the number one thing, creating a barrier. And again, we're making the investments. The checks start going out next week. It's going to be great.
Okay, Governor, thank you. Senator, about economic development, what would your plans be for the next 2 years?
Well, first of all, let me just be clear. In my district 2 years ago, this idea, I've never voted for an income tax or a sales tax. The governor keeps harping on this. Republicans in my district pointed out that was never an income tax. And I would veto an income tax or a sales tax if it came across my desk. Part of the reason why our businesses are not doing well is because property taxes have actually gone up by 1.7 billion since Chris has taken office. On workforce development, we have a plan for housing on our website that actually incorporates the municipalities and the developers, and then the workforce behind the workforce that actually constructs that, and that's the trades. The other part of this, which is really important on workforce, is that we have to have the educational programs, and part of that is making sure that we have robust educational programs starting in high school, continuing on to our public colleges and community colleges. When we have those things, education, training, housing, and childcare, we can see our workforce soar.
Thank you. Let's drill down into a couple of the topics that were mentioned in the answer from both candidates and take a minute here on workforce development. Senator, I'll start with you. So as you've also cited and the governor has echoed, one of the top challenges that we hear from businesses here at the chamber and truly statewide is this idea of having to search for and find the talent needed to fill the many open positions we find in our economy right now. New Hampshire is showing strong positive demographic trends of young professional in migration in recent years. But what strategies or policies might you support to address our workforce needs?
So the first and best source of workforce is going to be from New Hampshire itself, starting in our high schools with our CTE programs and with making sure that a child, when they get to graduating from high school, they actually have a marketable certification or licensure. That's something we can do through a combination of our public schools, our high school, our CTEs, and our community colleges. The Running Start program going into the pathways, making sure that there's that dovetail between the community colleges and the businesses. I've served on the Chancellor Search Committee for the community colleges. I'm very aware of the potential there, but it has not been tapped. Our neighboring states have actually made their community colleges free. What we can do is we can incentivize going forward in the areas where we have a lot of need is tuition-free training as long as you stay in New Hampshire for 5 years. That's the kind of programming that would move us forward to building that workforce.
Thank you, Senator. Governor, workforce development, what's your strategy for the next 2 years?
Yeah, well, so a couple things. I think Tom is actually exactly right. Making sure kids at 18 years old can get certifications. Investing in those CTEs is absolutely critical. Making sure students, when I became governor, you had to be like a senior or a junior to take those classes in the CTEs. Look, the workforce opportunity has to start around the 6th grade. It really does, right? Let me give an example. You have to take a foreign language. How about computer coding? Can coding be a language that a kid can take? Because I tell you, kids are excited about coding. Frankly, they're way better at it than adults are in terms of learning it. And it isn't just some a hobby or a life skill. It is a career that we can start early on. Or if you want to take high-tech welding, or you want to go into the trades in some way, why can't you do that at your freshman year? So starting those programs earlier is really, really vital. Making sure that we understand that at 18 years old, it isn't college or nothing. It's kids should have the world of opportunities that might fit their path. So it could be entering the workforce, community college, it could be continuing on to a fifth year, it could be going into the military, it could be going to a four-year school. The world is their oyster with the economic opportunities that are out there, so let's make sure they have those skills as early as possible to create as many paths and doorways that they want.
Governor, you'd mentioned housing before as well. I'd like to drill into that for the two of you to be able to talk about that plan. Maybe just as a scene setter, right now we're all super familiar with the fact that prices at the moment have gone way up. In some cases, those prices have priced some home buyers out of the market because inflation has also driven up interest rates, making it harder to borrow the money needed to pay for these homes. On top of the fact that here in New Hampshire, maybe it's perhaps a benefit because of demand, but inventory for houses at the moment is low. So in the grand scheme of things, how do we improve affordable housing?
Yeah. Well, I'll bring up a stat that you brought up, which I think is pretty incredible. We have a higher percentage of young families moving into New Hampshire now than we have in 20 years, which is awesome. I mean, that's really the foundation that you want. One of the big strategies is when you talk about workforce housing, traditionally we talk about federal programs that focused on Manchester and Nashua and our small cities. That's fine. But at the end of the day, we are a state of 220 cities and towns. My Invest NH housing program, $100 million that's going out literally next week, that focuses on rural areas as well. A lot of these smaller businesses want to branch into more rural areas. People want to do more businesses out of their home. Maybe they have 5 or 6 employees over in Grantham, right? So they need employees over in Grantham. And so workforce housing isn't just for the cities anymore. It's really for the entire breadth of New Hampshire, because that's where the economic opportunity lies. And that was one of the key parts. And it's not just 100 units in an apartment building. That's fine. We just cut a ribbon on a great building right here in Manchester the other day. But it's also for the 5 or 10 units in Gorham or in Pittsfield or in Claremont. So making sure that we have a kind of the 220 cities and towns jumping into the workforce housing opportunity. That's really critical.
Governor, thank you. Senator, workforce housing.
Thank you. I'd point out that when I go out the door of our Manchester office, we have 30 to 50 people who are homeless sitting out in front. That number is skyrocketing. The governor has missed the ball on over $18 million of funding for rental assistance right in the middle of a housing crunch. And in so doing, what he's done is made it put another tens of millions of dollars at risk in the second part of that program. We need to be addressing housing in a systemic way. We need 20,000 units. His program is an okay start with $100 million to cover 2,000 units. We have on our website a program that will create the 20,000 units over time. It doubles down on the governor's use of federal funding, $100 million. And when we put those two programs together, we can really be working towards the 20,000 units that we need statewide.
Thank you, Senator. Governor, maybe let's stay on this for just a minute.
Sure.
I believe it was late in the week last week, there was an announcement about the emergency rental assistance program. Could you shed some light on what's going on with that situation and what your message to Washington was?
Yeah, the feds pulled the plug. So the federal government sent us a letter. This was great. 2 weeks ago, the federal government sends us a letter saying, by the way, ARPA, we don't have enough money from Congress, so all the questions you have about how to spend ARPA funds, don't call us anymore. The letter literally said, please do not contact us by phone. Just refer to our website. So Treasury has pulled back on all the communications in terms of how this stuff works. And then, last week we get a letter saying, we asked you if you wanted some more money for your rental program. We said yes. You're not going to get it, and it's going to end on December 29th, right in the middle of Christmas. The federal government program is going to end. Right? We've gotten about $230 million or something out into assistance. About 25,000 people have gotten emergency assistance. It's been great. It's worked. And they said, do you want to continue the program? Yes. We said yes. About 25 states, no, you're not going to get the money. So I can't tell you what's happening at Treasury. Treasury is an absolute mess. It's the same Treasury that told us that inflation was temporary, right? It's the same Secretary of Treasury that said there's no recession, and there is. It really is coming. And it's the same Treasury that said, we can't answer your questions anymore because Congress didn't give us enough money. And we know we offered you some more money, but we're not going to give it to you. And by the way, tell all your citizens the program's over at Christmas. It's nuts. I mean, Washington is completely out of control. And Treasury, I've said it for a while, Janet Yellen's got to go. That's a different federal issue. I know we're not debating federal issues right now, but Treasury has been an absolute mess in terms of its allocation and assistance. I think New Hampshire, I'm going to throw it in real quick. New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority and the CAP agencies have done a great job administering the programs, but yeah, they just pulled the rug out from under us.
Governor, thank you. Senator, 90 seconds.
It was reported in the Union Leader yesterday that what the governor just said wasn't true. What's the truth is that the state had an obligation to fully expend a certain part of ERA 1, and they failed to do that. And that put the remainder at risk. It's not like the feds are pulling the plug. We're the only state, the only governor in the country who has failed on the first part of ERA and had to send back almost $19 million of federal funding. That's why now more than $50 million is at risk. This is not rocket science. This is about doing your job, standing up, being there, and being there for the people of New Hampshire. And now the people, right when we need it, as the governor said, right when we need it, they're at the highest risk.
Yeah. Can I respond to that? So you can go to their website, and it says who got the money and who didn't. And about 20, 25 states got additional funds. 20, 25 states. Vermont's getting no money. Maine's getting no money. I think Massachusetts is the only New England state actually getting money. So none of those states are getting money. That's on the website. It's clear. The explanation they gave us, they didn't give us an explanation, actually. They just they didn't even actually tell us. You had to go to their website and just see that we weren't listed along with 25 other states. So, again, it's all conjecture at this point, but the fact of the matter is the federal government is saying the program ends on Christmas. And they didn't have to. They could have allocated the money. They chose not to.
Governor, thank you. 30 seconds.
Whether you believe the governor or the union leader, the bottom line is we had to send back over $18 million of rental assistance, emergency rental assistance money to the federal government because we didn't use it at a time when we desperately needed it. All you have to do is go walk around Manchester right now and you'll understand that this is an issue not just for the homeless, not just for mental health, not just for substance use, but for businesses. Thank you.
Let's move now to the state budget. If elected, the most significant legislative priority on your desk will be drafting and submitting a state budget. At a high level, what key priorities would you seek to address in that budget? Senator?
One of the top priorities is bringing down property taxes. I would put rooms and meals back up at 40%, coming back to municipalities. I would make sure that municipalities got the state obligation of at least 7.5% on municipal pensions, if not 15%. Remember back in 2011, we actually said to the towns and the cities, we're supposed to be paying 30% of your municipal pensions, but we're not going to pay any of it. So we would do rooms and meals. We would make permanent the give back on at least a quarter of our original obligation on municipal pensions. And we would reinvigorate the municipal, the give back to cities and towns with direct property tax relief. Finally, we would pick up the state responsibility for public education, which in the last budget was cut by $50 million.
Senator, thank you. Governor, state budget priorities.
Well, I'll remind everyone that the Democrats controlled the House and the Senate in 2019 and 2020. And they sent me a budget. Tom Sherman was in the Senate. It didn't have any of that stuff in it. If you were really going to do that, you would have done it. You would have put the obligation back to the state from the cities and towns. You didn't do it. You would have increased it to the number that you talk about for meals and rooms tax. You didn't do it. You had the chance to do it. So you can't act like you haven't been in the State House, Tom, and especially in a leadership position that could have sent a budget that had those things in it, but you never chose to. You never even chose to sponsor bills that do that. At the end of the day, I can't tell you how awesome our state budget is. It's phenomenal. We have a larger surplus now. When I first became governor, I got excited after managing the first budget. I had like a $60 million surplus. It was a record. Do you know we have close to a $400 million surplus now? We keep cutting taxes. We keep vetoing taxes. We're getting rid of the interest and dividends. And we still have this massive surplus. We're sending more back in rooms and meals than ever before because he's right. The legislature for years was shortchanging. So we got it back up, I think it's like 30% now. Go look at how much money is coming back from the state for rooms and meals tax, higher than it's been in 20 years. It's phenomenal. But at the end of the day, we have surplus, which allows us to invest in one-time infrastructure, one-time projects. And again, on the education side, we send more dollars back per child, more dollars, public dollars per child, than ever before. Any administration in history, we top it. So to say that we're somehow shortchanging folks, our education surplus has, again, our education trust fund, another $50 million surplus. So money is not the problem. It's making sure that we can allocate these programs and make the investments wisely without increasing the size of government.
Governor, thank you. Senator, please feel free to take a minute.
This is public record. Public record is that we passed a budget in 2019 that gave $170 million back for education. It kept rooms and meals at 40%. It gave back $40 million in direct assistance to municipalities. Public record will show that the governor vetoed that because it didn't have his corporate tax cuts in it. That's the public record. Public record will also show that in this most recent budget, not only did they cut net education by $50 million, but they tucked in an abortion ban. The first abortion ban in modern history. They put in place a voucher program, now $10 million over budget, that takes our taxpayer dollars and gives it to private and religious schools. That's not something to be proud of. That's something to vote against, and that's what I did.
So let's talk, look, there are less kids going to school. We have 1.5% less kids every year in school. So yeah, the total amount of dollars is going down because there's simply less children in school, and that's why we have this large surplus in the education trust fund, and I think we need to redo the formula, frankly. I think that would be a great thing to do, and I think the legislature should jump into it. On the education freedom accounts, they're awesome. Thousands of families, many of which right here in Manchester, are finally being asked, how do you want to use your money? Not the government's money, it's your money. How do you want to use your money for the best pathway for your children? And so at 300% of the federal poverty level and below, right, those on low or fixed incomes, they now have an opportunity they never had before. And it isn't just a couple hundred. He's right, it's overprescribed by $10 million. That's great. That means that there's a huge demand out there. People love the program. It is working for families. It ain't about the government. It ain't about the system. It's about the families, the kids, and the individuals. We're providing a pathway, and people are taking advantage of it like never before. That is a huge win.
Senator, a minute.
I was up in Berlin. Berlin has a very high property tax rate. A woman told me she was paying $11,000 a year for her property taxes for a small house. They can't afford a chemistry teacher. This isn't Governor Sununu's money. It's not my money. It's our money. We're a community. We are a bunch of communities in New Hampshire. Our public schools are the core of our communities. We hear that over and over again. Look at Croydon. This is in Manchester, a critical issue is how are we going to support our public schools? And the governor has chosen to subsidize people because 85% of the children taking advantage of the voucher program are already in private school. This isn't about choice. This is about using public money to subsidize private and religious schools. I fundamentally disagree with that. It's everybody's money. It's not his money, it's not mine, and we need to be thoughtful stewards of the public trust.
You know, for a guy who represents the party who wants equal opportunity for everyone, I couldn't agree more. Equal opportunity, right? Private school just ain't for the rich kids anymore in New Hampshire. Let's just cut right to it. If you are in a lower or middle income family, look, I have means, Tom has means, right? We have options for our kids, and that's wonderful, but not everybody does. And that's exactly what this program's for. Middle and lower income families have now the same options that other families do. Isn't that what this is all about? Not saying that you're just stuck with the four walls. And we have the best schools in the country. I mean, we are consistently, right? So the best schools in the country, it is awesome. But every once in a while, there's 1 or 2% of the kids where it just isn't working great. That's okay. We're providing an alternative. Not the path that I'm telling you to make, the path that families and parents are choosing for themselves. It's a huge win.
Governor, thank you. Senator, I'd like to advance on education, give you a chance to respond, but let me throw this into the mix here. Looking forward, would you have any specific plans or ideas for how to improve the connection between education and graduates and the workforce needs and the local businesses that are looking to try and hire at this point, given, as a chamber audience, that's a high priority for them in education?
Absolutely. You know, we do have among the best community colleges in the country, I believe, and they could be better. And the links between the community colleges, their running start programs in high schools, and the CTE programs, those all need to be expanded. And when they're expanded, and especially when the link between those programs and the local businesses are expanded, we will be working to build that workforce for the future. That's not enough, because we know about those businesses in Portsmouth where, yeah, they've got the people there, but when they decide to have children, they can't come back to work because there's no child care. This is a comprehensive reform that we need to be doing to provide that workforce. But we actually have the infrastructure in place. It needs to become a system that we put together. And we've done that. We've done that in individual cases. We need to make sure it's something we embrace around the entire state with all of our community colleges.
Governor?
Yeah. Well, sorry.
In terms of moving forward,
Yeah.
How can you work to better make the connections between graduates of our school system and the workforce needs and the hiring process?
Sure. No, I don't think Tom and I disagree on this one very much. I mean, it's about making sure that those opportunities exist well before they graduate, right? So, for example, we have our career academies, which now actually says you can take your 4th year of high school and basically take 2 years of community college, because community college is about half the price you typically pay for a public high school year. And so now you use that money. It doesn't cost really the citizen anything, because you're just reusing the money that would have gone to high school. And when you come out, you have an associate's degree and a high school degree and a certificate and a job interview and all of that. We have it's kind of like our dual and concurrent enrollment program. We have our Learn Everywhere program where, again, as a high school student, you can basically take classes anywhere you want and get credit for those classes, right? Again, it's not just constricted to the 4 walls of the classroom anymore. I think our community college, Tom's right, our community college system it's definitely one of the best in New England, if not in the country. It's a great bang for your buck, so to say. They're real accredited programs that get connected or already pre-connected with workforce. So you have the hospitals kind of doing the training with their equipment. You have the auto dealers giving their equipment, so kids are learning on that equipment so they can go right into that workforce, so we're not losing them to the Bostons and the New Yorks and whatever it might be. So it's really just about creating that opportunity a little sooner than we traditionally have.
Governor, thank you. Senator?
Yes, and one additional point, specifically on areas of need, for example, in the healthcare field or in childcare, in early childhood education. We need to actually go back and refund or fund those programs in the high schools, in the CTE programs. They are excellent programs. I've toured the one at Seacoast, the Seacoast School of Technology, SST. Also in Concord, they have great programs on early childhood that we can be promoting. But as they move forward into their community college career, we need to make sure that we have that tuition-free process for moving forward, and that when they work in New Hampshire for 5 years, that's how they earn that tuition-free status.
Senator, thank you. Governor, it was raised a minute ago in this conversation, the idea of the challenges of child care. You have a lot of working families out there. It can be expensive. Access can be a challenge. What can be done to further enhance access to affordable child care for working families?
So look, I mean, child care access was a challenge across this country before the pandemic. Then the pandemic hits and we hit a real crisis. We don't close it, the state never said you have to close your child care centers or anything like that. In fact, over the pandemic, we put in $143 million. $143 million. And child care centers, all these private centers could apply for that. And it was teacher stipends, it was equipment, it was infrastructure rebuilds, it was anything we could do to help support them to make sure that they could keep the workforce there and folks wanted to be. And we've changed the rules to give more flexibility to child care. Everybody could apply. I suppose there could be some child centers that didn't apply for those funds, but everybody could apply. Everything was on the table. We were incredibly supportive because we knew the doctors and the nurses and those that were staying in the workforce really needed to make sure that they could be at work and their kids could get proper care going forward. I think the biggest issue around childcare now still is around those workforce challenges, and as we were just speaking to, making sure that students have those opportunities and are integrated in those opportunities well before graduation would be critical. But there's no doubt when you talk about mental health and nurses and childcare, I mean, there's a national workforce shortage here. So at the end of the day, it isn't just driving a dollar to prop them up through a pandemic. It's really about making sure that they have the workforce. We have more flexibility in our rules and our regulations to allow more kids with less parents, but still keep those kids safe. So there's a huge opportunity there.
Governor, thank you. Senator, 90 seconds on child care.
Once again, the governor is taking a victory lap on a problem that grew while he was in office, now is at a crisis level. And those $150 million that he's talking about were just there to get the child care programs through COVID. Nothing after that. That's why in Portsmouth, there's a wonderful child care facility that has 2 empty classrooms because they can't get their own child care going. They can't hire. They can't find workers. We know that this is a crisis we have to solve. We need to have a program. So what we would do, when I'm governor, what we will do is we will make sure that that pathway is clear. In high school, the programming is available for children who are interested in early childhood so that when they graduate high school, they have a degree or a certification. And then any additional training that they might need, that's tuition free, as long as they stay in New Hampshire for 5 years. We're competing with Vermont and Maine, who have just made their community colleges free. We need to be reinvesting more in our public community colleges and our private and our public universities. We're right now the lowest in the nation in our investment in those programs. If you double it, we're still the lowest. We have the highest debt load among our graduates. This is how we get New Hampshire residents to stay in New Hampshire, and we know that when they get their education in New Hampshire, they stay here too. That's national data that shows that the last place where you are educated is where you're most likely to work. That's how we get our kids to stay and build their families here, but also build their careers.
Senator, let me change gears. We talked about child care. Let me mention now paid family leave if we're talking about pocketbook expenses. Effective in 2023, all New Hampshire employers are eligible to participate in the Granite State Paid Family and Medical Leave Plan, a state-sponsored plan that allows employers to buy wage replacement insurance through MetLife for specific employee leaves of absences. Can you share your perspective on the impact of this new plan? 1 minute.
The impact is, actually, I voted for it both times. In fact, when it was challenged by the governor's own party, I voted to support it. So this is something that will allow people to take that leave when their loved one's sick, when their child's sick, when a child's born. I think it needs to be expanded if it works at this level. I think back to a program we had back in the late 2000s for medical malpractice, where the state said there's just not available insurance, so we're going to provide that. And guess what happened? It was shown to be fiscally feasible, and it got transferred over to commercial insurance. I'm hoping that this plan of paid family medical leave will also be successful and be able to be expanded to the rest of the population.
Thank you, Senator. Governor, the Granite State Paid Family and Medical Leave Plan?
Yeah, look, Tom Sherman loves my plan. I think that's awesome. I can tell you a quick story. So 2019, I think it was 2019, my budget director walks in, and we used to have these really intense budget discussions and all that. And he said, Gov, I have an idea. I said, okay, what's the idea? He said, paid family leave. I said, okay, well, we're not doing an income tax. We're going to veto that when the Dems throw that on our desk. He said, no, I don't think it needs an income tax. It can be a voluntary plan. And I knew enough about this, and I said, that's never been done. There's no such thing as a voluntary government-sponsored paid family leave plan without an income tax in the country. It does not exist. He said, I think I have a way to do it. I said, all right, go show me. So he comes back like 2 weeks later, and he has this idea. And I look at the math, I'm like, that could work. So we go to the private sector, we say, what do you think? And they say, again, it's never been done, but the math bears out. This could work. New Hampshire is now the only state in the country, and as of this month, you can sign up for paid family leave across the entire state with a very low premium, without an income tax, completely voluntary. The only place in America you can do that is in the 603. And I'll take credit for it. I got to give my old budget director credit. I got to give Mac credit because he's the one that really came up with the design. I don't think he lives in the state anymore, so I'll take credit. But the fact of the matter is we came up with this super innovative idea. And what did the Democrats say at the time? It'll never work. Everyone has to pay or the whole thing will fail. It can never work. It can never work. No, it works, and we have a price. The cost to you, if you don't want it, is nothing. You don't have to have it, right? Or if you want it, it's there at a very, very low premium. And so, and is the state acting like an insurance company under the Democrats' plan? The state would have been the insurance company. No, it's a private sector group that comes in and administers it. So it's super exciting, it's super innovative, and my sense is in with the next few years, you're gonna see states all over the country copy our plan.
Governor, let's change gears now and talk about energy.
Sure.
Rising and unstable energy costs are a significant risk factor to families, but also to our business community, to our regional economy, and in particular, manufacturing jobs. But certainly no industry is untouched by this right now. What will your upcoming energy policy priorities be as governor for the next 2 years?
Yeah, so look, we put two energy plans together, long-term plans, since I'm a governor. About every 2 years, we evolve it, we roll it. Across the country, energy costs are rising, fuel costs are spiking. In New England, energy costs are out of control. Massachusetts, we thought our electric rates were high in New Hampshire. Now Massachusetts has higher electric rates. I know folks, oh, well, the governor must be responsible for all of New England's high electricity costs. The fact of the matter is when you have an administration in Washington that does not incentivize more production of natural gas, when the demand will go up this winter, there's going to be no more increased production to match that, right? So therefore, the prices skyrocket. That's the way the contracts actually work. And everyone's going to feel the pinch, from Maine to Connecticut, and even out in the Marcellus Shale, especially if you're on heating oil, that's going to go up 30–40%. So no one is not affected by it. The key is always looking at energy policy through the lens of the ratepayer. Democrats used to criticize me that I was too worried about cost. You're too worried about cost, Governor. You're darn right I was. They wanted TCI. I was the first governor to stand up, and I killed TCI. My opponent supports TCI, but that would have been an immediate 17-cent gas tax increase. They yelled at me when I vetoed $180 million a year that would have been a subsidy on the electric bill because they wanted to change the renewable portfolio standards to something that was completely unrealistic. $180 million a year. The Democrats killed this little thing called Northern Pass. 1,200 megawatts of clean, renewable hydropower into New Hampshire. I fought hard for it as the only guy standing up strong trying to fight for Northern Pass. And it was the Democrats that killed it on the Site Evaluation Committee. Boy, wouldn't we love to have Northern Pass now, huh? So we're always looking through the lens of the ratepayer. And I'll take all the criticism in the world if people want to criticize me for that. But the chickens are coming home to roost. We need long-term strategies that put the customer first.
Governor, thank you. Senator, 90 seconds.
The chickens certainly are coming home to roost. Our electric bills in the state of New Hampshire have more than doubled under Chris Sununu. He has blocked virtually every effort to expand our energy alternatives in the state. He did want Northern Pass, which was going to Massachusetts and Connecticut with no guarantee of any of it coming to New Hampshire. This is a governor who has blocked virtually everything that has been done towards renewables and efficiency and weatherization. It's shown to be effective. It's shown to lower cost. And he did it saying this was for the ratepayer. But the ratepayer is now paying double. We have people struggling in New Hampshire to figure out how they're going to stay warm this winter. We worked together, actually, to pass a bill during our veto session that would allow people to access, people in lower incomes to access energy. But we didn't do the other steps that are needed for an energy plan. We need to expand renewables. We need to give people the freedom to produce their own energy, businesses to produce their own energy, lift the caps, and make sure that we are focused on the cheapest intervention and the quickest intervention, which is efficiency and weatherization.
Look, everybody wants the renewables. And again, we're doing offshore wind. Previous administrations didn't do that. We're looking towards offshore wind. We think, again, I'm going to keep going back to hydro because the river runs 24 hours a day. The fact that every bit of the renewable portfolio standard is funded through a tax on your bill. So if you just want to do everything all at once for political reasons, we're going to be like Massachusetts and Connecticut and Rhode Island, where they've shut down now around New England. 7 natural gas plants have shut down, destabilizing our whole system. Because in the winter, solar is about 10% effective, about 10% effective. So you can't rely on that. It's a good opportunity, but that can't be the core of your system because the rates would skyrocket even more. So when you look at California, look at Germany, what they did with their plan, look at what the Biden administration did. When you go too hard, too fast, everybody pays the price. It has to be a transition, and it has to be done, again, through the lens of that ratepayer, because there's a cost to all of it, without just being, Green New Deal, everything on politics first. That costs everybody, and we're all feeling the pains of it.
Governor, thank you. Senator, a minute.
Once again, the governor is making up his facts. The reality is there's a 4-year study from Massachusetts that shows that over 4 years, the ratepayer actually benefits from renewables by $1.1 billion. The experience in Maine is that we know that they are paying lower rates. They are doing more to invest in their programming than we ever dreamed of, even 3 years ago. And we also know from the governor's own prepared report from Canada, looking at what's going to happen if we actually implement renewables in New Hampshire, that we're going to see a 92% reduction in cost over 35 years for the ratepayer. These are the things that happen when you actually move forward with the technology that's available. When you don't, you double your rates, which is exactly where we are right now.
Wow.
We need to take the initiative on expanding energy options and providing businesses and residents the freedom to expand their own energy options. It's one of the biggest expenses. I was up in Lisbon at a wire factory. That's their biggest expense, is electricity. We need to allow them to produce their own.
Look, the all renewables all the time. Let's use the example. Let's not talk hypotheticals. Let's look at California. They've done more renewables faster than any place else in the country. They're literally at the point where they're telling people not to plug in their electric cars during certain hours of the day. That's how unstable their entire electricity grid is out there. If that's where you want to go, by all means, I'm telling you, you should vote for Tom Sherman. If that's the unstable, unreliable, expensive system you want. But when you go that hard all the time, look, and I'll use Germany. I think that's a great example. They said, man, we tried to go so fast with renewables, our entire system is now screwed up. And again, look at what happened nationally with fuel prices. It costs twice as much to put gas in your car, twice as much to put heating oil in your tank, twice as much to pay your electricity bill. This is really bad national policy from people that put politics before looking at the price tag.
Governor, thank you. Senator, final word.
Final word is that we are not going to be like California because we talk about balance in New Hampshire. Nobody is talking about going entirely to renewables. But right now, our renewable percentage is 0.78. Massachusetts is 20%. We are so far behind the curve that we don't even fit on the same graph with our neighboring states.
So why is Massachusetts price higher, Tom?
Not just Massachusetts.
Why are Massachusetts prices higher?
Not just Massachusetts. Every other state in our greenhouse gas initiative. That's why we have to move forward. We have to embrace the technology, lift the caps, allow the free market to work on energy.
Governor, I'd like to change gears to an issue that you'll be facing, most likely, whoever wins this race, over the next 2 years. It actually comes in the topic of Medicaid expansion and health care coverage. The legislature is going to have to decide whether or not to reauthorize this program in 2023. HHS Commissioner Lori Shibinette has publicly suggested overhauling the program, making some pretty significant changes to how it's managed in New Hampshire. Governor, what are your thoughts about what needs to happen with Medicaid?
Yeah, well, when I first came in as governor, we had a fully Republican legislature. You had myself, and we expanded Medicaid. It was the right thing to do, and my sense is we're going to expand it again. I don't think you're going to get a whole lot of pushback. Obviously, I'll push as hard as we can to make sure that happens. We did it once with Republicans. I think we're going to do it again. And then we took additional steps, right? We did the rate increases in specialized areas. Actually, we did a rate increase across the board for everybody. I'm looking at Senator Susi. She was very instrumental in that. Thank you, Senator. In 2019 and 2020. We created a dental Medicaid benefit for adults that had never existed in this state, and now it actually exists, and it's actually getting up and running with Tom Raffio and the folks at Delta Dental. And so it's not just about expanding Medicaid, it's about creating more opportunities. Are there more efficiencies to find in the system? Absolutely. Medicaid is merely a federally driven system, but we manage it locally, so we can find always better opportunities. We have a managed Medicaid system, which works okay, to be honest. I think it's got a lot of problems. I think some of Lori's ideas about revamping revamping that system and getting away from the fee-for-service is a good idea, but maybe a more regional approach to managed Medicaid or something like that might, again, create better efficiencies. So, no, we'll definitely expand Medicaid. We've put more services on there. Again, we can still cut taxes, and we don't have to draw more money out of people's pocketbooks to do that. With good fiscal management at the top, we're able to create those opportunities. But I think Lori is right. It probably needs some advancing. I think we've only started this about 5-6 years ago. I think we can take the next step, find better efficiencies in it.
Governor, thank you. Senator, 90 seconds.
Thank you, and I appreciate the governor highlighting many of the bills that I worked so hard to get through, whether it's dental Medicaid benefits, reauthorization, all of these. But I actually was part of the team that brought Medicaid and created the bipartisan compromise. And I will tell you right now that if the same legislature is reelected that was there this past 2 years, they are not going to reauthorize Medicaid expansion. They just don't believe in it fundamentally, and that's why we need a new legislature that's not so extreme. Medicaid expansion has been the backbone of our mental health and substance use disorder treatment program, but it's not enough. I was in the emergency room doing my rounds, and a little girl was there. She was 10 years old. She looked up at me. She'd been there 10 days without treatment for her mental health disorder. We need to be sure that those programs are not only in New Hampshire for her to go to, but that we can expand them and have residential programming for kids in New Hampshire who are in need. That's something we can do through Medicaid. We also need to further increase the rates so that we can hold on to our highly trained employees, especially in mental health and substance use.
Look, I just want to add to, I get it. The Democrat line is, oh, the Republicans are so scary when it comes to health care and all that. Look, we had like 240 Republicans in the legislature when I first became governor. We got expansion through easily. It wasn't even really a question. So this idea that if you elect Republicans, your health care is going away, Medicaid's going away, everything is, that boogeyman stuff is just, it's nuts. Just look at the results. We did it in 2017. We're going to do it again. I don't hear anybody out there saying that we shouldn't be expanding. Does anyone even hear anybody talking like that? No, on either side of the aisle? No, of course we're going to expand it again. Why would the Republicans that are in control right now expand and create a dental benefit for Medicaid for adults if they were going to somehow get rid of it in the next couple of years? So that kind of stuff it's just anything to do to scare folks, to try to get a Democrat ticket. But at the end of the day, folks in New Hampshire are smart. They see what's happening out there. They talk to their leadership. There's no risk of expanded Medicaid not going forward.
Senator?
That's pretty humorous. Right now on prescription drugs, which many of us care about deeply, prescription drugs costs. There's a bill that's been filed by one of the leading Republicans in the House to repeal it. There was a bill to repeal the State Health Assessment, State Health Improvement Plan Advisory Council. That's an advisory council. They're wanting to repeal that. This is a legislature that put in place the first abortion ban, which the governor signed. This is a legislature that took away public funds and gave it to private schools. The governor signed that too. Number one, it can happen. And number two, the governor has already shown that he can't lead his own party when it came to $27 million of vaccine money in the executive council. And that's only 4 votes that we needed. This is a clear threat to Medicaid expansion.
Governor, I want to give you a chance to respond to that
No,
if necessary.
it's
but
nonsense.
let me
I'm
advance.
not going to go back and forth on it. No one's talking about getting rid of Medicaid expansion. If it was even being talked about, I think it's worth a discussion, but no one's even talking about it. It's not going to happen.
Before we move to closing arguments, this issue of leadership, being able to work with both sides, a bipartisan approach to governing, seems to be a part of the undercurrent of this conversation. What is your or will be your approach to working with the legislature to achieve results for the next 2 years, especially when it comes to working with, my terms, the somewhat political factions within each party on the left and on the right? How do you navigate that?
Look at my record. That's all I ask people to do, right? Don't take me at my word. Look at my record. I had a fully Republican House and Senate that, again, probably the bigger fights sometimes happen within your own family sometimes, and those arguments sometimes happen. I don't agree with my party all the time. I had a fully Democrat legislature in my second term. We worked with them. We got stuff done. I vetoed their first budget, came back, renegotiated, got it moving forward, never had to shut down the government or anything like that. And now we have a Republican House and Senate that I work with now. And I vetoed their bills too. So, I mean, at the end of the day, my allegiance, I got 1.4 million people that I respond to. That's it. And that's actually the funnest part of the job. My job is to be super selfish for 1.4 million people without care for the party extremes. And you see the party extremism on national TV and across the country, but you don't have that heat here, right? We've always find a way to work it out. We're a very purple state. We're a very independent state. So anyone who comes in with an extremist one-party agenda, isn't going to go very far. And both sides have their extremists, but the bulk of us are right in here, right? 80% of us, 85% of us, Democrat and Republican, are right here knowing that at the end of the day, you got to get stuff done. If I wasn't getting stuff done with Republicans, if I wasn't getting stuff done with Democrats, I wouldn't be standing here looking for a fourth term. But I've been reelected because based on a record of just putting the citizens first, having to be the guy at the top, right? The buck stops here. You got to make tough decisions. Can't say yes to everything, but that's what good management is all about.
Governor, thank you. Senator, how do you work with the different political factions in the State House to be successful as governor? 90 seconds.
That's been the fundamental of being able to get things like Medicaid expansion, being able to do prescription drugs, being able to do the idea of the dental benefit. All of these things required bipartisan negotiation. But the governor is not getting along with the parties. He has set the record for vetoes in the legislature. The fundamental difference between the way the governor and I would govern is I've been in the House and in the Senate. I start at the beginning, just like Maggie Hassan and Jean Shaheen did. We start with an agenda. We say, here are the problems we need to solve. Let's work together to craft the legislation that will let that happen. Let's nurture it through the process and make sure that at the other end, there's something I can sign. And I'm not done when I sign it. When I sign it, then it's my job as the leader of the executive branch to make sure it gets implemented. We had 51 children sitting in our emergency rooms in February of 2021. Why? Because the system of care not only had not been implemented, that's how children are taken care of when they have acute mental health crisis. It wasn't $5 million of the $25 million that were set aside for that had actually lapsed because they were so far behind schedule. So it's critical that we have a leader who knows how to get things done, knows how to work across party lines, knows how the system works, and can actually get things done without setting records on vetoes.
We've come to the end of the Q&A.
No, hold on. So you're going to sit there and mark and create the baseline for our mental health system at the peak of a COVID pandemic? Right before the COVID pandemic, you know how many individuals in the state were in emergency rooms? Zero. And I'll tell you what, I'll take some credit, but it really goes to Lori Shibinette. She made sure that system moved, and it was zero. Yes, the COVID pandemic exacerbated everything, right? In terms of mental health and workforce and all that. And so, yes, absolutely, the numbers went up. When I became governor, under the former governor, Hassan, the number was in about the 90s. We got it down to zero in a couple of years. The COVID pandemic moved it up, and now it's back down. I think there's about 25 individuals right now. And the amount of time that people wait in an emergency room has been cut by 2/3. It's down to about 1/3 of what it used to be. Is the system absolutely working? No, of course not. We've just bought a new mental health hospital for children. We now have mobile teams all across the state for mental health that people can act. You have a phone number on the back of every student ID so folks know who to call and where to go. We have more DRF beds, community beds all over the state. We've made more investments and better results on mental health than ever before. And the fact that Tom is going to use the height of the pandemic as the benchmark of a problem with mental health, it tells you if that's the best, is that the best criticism you can come up with? I'll take that criticism all day because we're moving the dial. We're actually the only state that's increasing population, as opposed to the system in Massachusetts has hundreds of people on a daily basis waiting for it. We have 25, and we're not going to minimize. You want that number to be zero. I'm the only governor in the past 25 years that has shown how to get that number to zero. And of course, as the workforce comes back in, things are really getting back to normal. We can get there as well.
Governor, thank you. Senator, final response before closings.
Yeah, I would point out that right now New Hampshire Hospital has 2 wings closed. We have no services that are fully available for children. We did have a residency program with 4 faculty members from Dartmouth-Hitchcock in psychiatry. It's gone. This is where the governor has gone. He's taken a mental health program that had construct, which was a system of care, and it's now chaos. It's chaos, one, because he didn't address the workforce issues long ago when they were rising. And now we have wings closed, we have children waiting. And by the way, this isn't just the pandemic. This is not just the pandemic. It is still going on today, and he still has no plan for putting it in place.
Senator and Governor, thank you both for answering our questions through the course of this lively exchange of ideas. It's time to move to closing statements. Before I do so, I just want to thank our presenting sponsor, Eversource, and of course to our host, the New Hampshire Institute of Politics. By coin flip, Dr. Sherman, you get to go first. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. The contrast couldn't be different between Chris Sununu and me. Number one, every single relationship I build is based on trust. And I am running for governor for that factory in Keene that wants to expand. I'm running for governor for the people who want to go back to work but can't find childcare. I'm running for governor for seniors whose property taxes and energy costs have doubled, and they're wondering how they're going to make it through the next week. I'm running for governor for those people outside my office in Manchester who are expanding their numbers of homeless in the state. This is all happening on Chris Sununu's watch. He's not focused on New Hampshire. He's focused on what the extremists want him to do in the legislature, putting in place the first abortion ban in modern history, creating subsidies for private schools, while the rest of the state is struggling. He's taking a victory lap before we even have plans in place. I'm running for governor because I know that the businesses of New Hampshire will thrive when those issues are addressed. Housing, childcare, education, training. And when businesses are able to be as productive as they know they can be, all Granite Staters will thrive. That's why I'm running for governor, because I want the focus to be back on all of those people, the people of the Granite State, and I'm looking for your vote in November. Thank you.
Senator Sherman, thank you. Governor, closing
Look,
statement.
the state's rocking it. It really is. We have challenges, we take them head on. But at the end of the day, you know, this is the place everybody wants to be. We are the envy of 49 other states. We're not like kind of good, kind of average, above average. We are literally the envy of 49 other states. One of the best public education systems, the lowest poverty rate in the country, one of the lowest unemployment rates, some of the highest wages in the country, more economic opportunity than virtually any other state in the country. That's why we're the fastest growing population in the Northeast. That's super cool. That's why we have more young families moving in than we have in the last 20 years. That's a huge opportunity. It doesn't mean we don't have challenges. But boy, look, there are national challenges out there on energy, on inflation. Inflation is hitting every single person. Inflation is the worst tax on the poor you could possibly imagine, because those in a more affluent place like New Hampshire, a lot of folks can withstand inflation, and a lot of folks can't. And so the fact of the matter is it costs more money to put food on the table. It costs more money for your heating oil, for your electricity, for everything in life. And so bad policies have consequences, and everyone is feeling that. If you're on a fixed income, you're feeling it hard. We have extra money at the state level. We return that to the property taxes. The property taxpayers, $100 million in property, in sending money back to property taxes. Now, a lot of cities and towns, I don't know what they do with that money, but they should be lowering your property taxes. And if not, you should go talk to your counselors or your mayor or your town, or show up at town meeting, because we've returned these dollars. Clean drinking water, $250 million in investments, never been done before. Invest in NHIOP housing program, $100 million, never been done before. When you have good fiscal management at the top, you can create all this extra surplus money for opportunities for the individuals. And that is exactly why we are the envy of the nation. We are growing in population. Businesses are growing here, want to be here by the thousands in the last couple of years. And that's an opportunity we need to keep going. Is a recession coming? You bet it is. Unfortunately, the recession is going to hit in 23 and 24 as the federal money starts drying up. And again, you want someone at the top that has good fiscal responsibility. So I don't ask anyone to vote for me based on platitudes. I just ask for folks to look at the record. And I'm very proud of the record of success that we have in New Hampshire. And I'm asking for them simply to look at that and hopefully earn that vote in a couple weeks. Was it 2 weeks? Holy cow, it's only 2 weeks away. But thank you, this has been fun.
Governor, thank you. Senator, thank you. On behalf of the Greater Manchester Chamber, thanks to all of you for being here. Have a wonderful day, and don't forget to vote in 2 weeks.
Great.
Take care.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Thanks, buddy.
Thank you, Senator.